Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar Pod here on the CLNS Media Network, brought to you in part by our great friends at Prize Picks. Back with me on the Jungle Roar Pod this week. Haven't had him on for about 6 months or so, and I figured, well, it's a good time. I caught up with him at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Why not bring him on the show? That would be Charlie Clifford of WLWT Channel 5 here in Cincinnati. Charlie, thanks for taking time out. And did you glean anything interesting from your time at Lucas Oil Stadium and the Indiana Convention Center?
Trags, thank you. And it was just great to be amongst all our colleagues, right? There's no better convention. There's no better 48-hour period where you can connect with people from every beat across the league.
Yep.
Former coaches, maybe that you've overlapped in previous beats, and all the new faces too. I think just watching the Chicago media follow Ben Johnson around and all the intrigue there is with that hire. And then, internally with us, Duke Tobin stepping to the podium and exuding a level of confidence that I think caught many of us off guard pertaining to his 3 stars that are all looking for contract extensions. There was no hesitation on Duke's end with the team's vision and the team's optimism that Hendrickson, Chase, and Higgins will all be running out of the tunnel week 1 here in Cincinnati, which for me, that was the biggest takeaway. I know that's nothing shocking there.
Here's my take on that, Charlie. I think that was more of a PR spin than possibly 100% pure reality. I do believe the Bengals feel they're optimistic or feel that a deal can be done, certainly with the 2 wide receivers, and they are certainly hoping that. And maybe even Trey Hendrickson, get a 2-year extension done with him, perhaps at maybe $25 to $28 million a season. But I think more to the point that the reason Duke Tobin came out and used the words he did, saying, using the words aligned quite a bit, using the word framework quite a bit, is that I think he wanted, on behalf of the ownership, Katie and Troy Blackburn and Mike Brown, to demonstrate or project, is the better word, an image of we can get the deal done with all of our big stars, project that image to the fan base, because the fans, darn well, Charlie, are concerned that Jamar's probably in the bank. He's probably going to be signed. That'll be taken care of. But if they lose T and they lose Trey, then what? Those are massive, massive holes. And I think that was those words of Duke Tobin, both on the dais and with us privately, after he spoke to reporters on the dais at the podium in Indy. I think he was trying to calm fears. And I think ownership is trying to calm fears. Do I think a deal eventually gets done with Jamar and T? I do. Personally, I'm 50-50 on Trey Hendrickson. How about you?
Yeah, I think your 28 to or 25 to 28 range, I don't think he's going to sign that, Mike. I think that number needs to start with a 3. I think if you're him at this stage in his career, knowing just threw up back-to-back career years, and you kind of made me run it back last year and prove it again after I threw out the trade request, I don't think there's a reality where he is putting his name down for less than $30 million annually. Now, if you can structure it to where the guarantees entice him to take a 2-year with heavy guarantees, I think that's one way maybe this can work in Cincy. But I just think there's going to be other people lined up with dangling maybe that 3rd year and dangling more guaranteed money. I'm with you. I think 50-50 is optimistic just with how this has gone the last year. And then to your overall point on Duke, I get the calming fears in the short term, but I think you just, you've opened yourself up for even more angst if for whatever reason, let's say in the next 24 hours, Tee Higgins becomes a franchise player, and that ultimately sours the way he looks at You guys are doing this to me again. Well, now I'm less inclined to do a long-term deal. I think they've opened up themselves for more blowback down the road if for whatever reason Higgins doesn't get done. I'm with you though. I think they've made Higgins a priority. I don't think this is lip service. I think it started with Joe back in Dallas where this thing got really real and this whole crystal ball changed. So I have no doubt that they really want to do it. It's just, are you playing with fire if you're now turning to a second franchise tag? I want to know, was that part of the plan all along, or is this now just their only course of action? I think that's the most intriguing part of all this. Was this part of the plan? Did T know, all right, you're going to have to do the franchise tag thing, and then we're going to get the deal done, or is this coming out of left field if you're him?
I think it's important, Charlie, to understand Trey Hendrickson is not a free agent. He is signed for the coming year. So he's not going to be able to hit the free agent market. And we should make that very, very clear.
Right.
The reason I throw out the 25 to 28 number is, as an existing player under contract for 2025, the Bengals are going to say to him, look, we know you're not a free agent. We would like to extend you for 2 more years. Here's the numbers that work best for us. As opposed to a guy like Tee Higgins, who's 5 years younger than Trey Hendrickson, who they know if they don't pay him long term, he's gone after the franchise tag. And I think it's really, really important to understand that and understand the leverage that the Bengals have in a case like Trey Hendrickson, who, again, probably should not have signed that extension when he did, but he did. And, the Bengals are going to use that certainly as negotiating power. I think, with with Tee Higgins, the Bengals know that having a 1-2 punch long term is in their best interest, not only for Joe Burrow, but for the team going forward for let's say the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. No argument there. No rebuttal. It's what they're best at. It's how they're built. And just like Philly, we saw this year how they committed to its running game and to dominating in that form and fashion. There's nothing to say that Cincy can't be just as successful dominating in their expertise, which is being, as Zach Taylor said multiple times down the stretch this past year, they want to be the best passing offense on the planet. It looks like they're right there. And now they need to sort out these other issues that we're going to start to see figured out as free agency heats up in the next 7 days.
All right. We do have some news to get to, and that is the Bengals releasing cap casualty cut, if you will. Alex Cappa, their starting right guard for the past 3 seasons. He signed a 4-year deal worth $36 million in March of 2022. He served the Bengals very well. The Bengals were not going to pay him this year, and they save $8 million in cap space by making the cut. The Bengals, that leaves a big hole at right guard. It's been assumed all offseason that the Bengals are going to have to fill one, if not both, of the interior offensive line positions on either side of Ted Karras this year. So what do you make of the Alex Cappa news, and do you think that the answer could be found in the draft?
I do. Expected move. He had the 7th highest cap hit on the team coming back, 10 and a quarter, and just going into year 8, turning 30, seeing the issues that were popping up regularly, really just this past season. I know Joe was very complimentary of Cappa in the film room over the years. I think his Brady connection in Tampa, I think they really used that to their advantage. And as you know, very close with Ted Karras. So that, he was a big part of that line from a personality standpoint too. But you're right. You're looking at the guard market. I think Will Fry is in Indianapolis, potentially a name to look at. I would like, just reading how the Bengals like to do things, find a guy who has some experience, who you believe under Scott Peters can still ascend. And ultimately, there's not going to be a huge tax, I think, on someone like Will Fries, who is, a rotational guy in Indianapolis, the Bectons of the world, anyone coming off Philly's roster. There's got to be a little Super Bowl tax tacked onto that story, right? So,
right.
I think, Volson, your thoughts on Volson, because clearly, that's a situation where, again, with a new voice, with a new way to look at things, I don't think they've given up on him by any means.
In terms of bringing Volson back?
Yeah.
I think the Bengals are going to stay in touch with him very closely. It's just going to come down to, Charlie, whether or not another team gives him a deal that's more than what the Bengals probably are interested in forking up. And I think the Bengals' preference at this point would be to go with a cheaper option, younger player draft. That's why I brought up the draft as opposed to signing a free agent. Now, certainly they're not opposed to signing some type of suitable free agent. But if another team is willing to give Alex Cappa $3 or $4 or $5 million guaranteed than what the Bengals are, I think they'd rather go the college draft, the NFL draft route.
And I didn't mean to confuse you. I was talking to just Volson being on the fourth year of his rookie deal now.
Yes,
yeah,
well,
not Cappa. This is a breakup, and yes, I didn't want to.
My bad.
No.
So with Cordell Volson, it's interesting you bring up that name because we're going to get to the other side. I think with Cordell Volson, the Bengals have not given up. I think they see the frame. They drafted him where they did back in 2023, and I believe they think that Volson can become more of a dominant running type guard, perhaps even flip over to the right side. But he has got to become tougher and stronger. He was getting bull rushed, and I was very surprised the last season where he was struggling as much as he was, Charlie. And, he did not obviously grade out very well in the Pro Football Focus, the PFF ratings this year. And he's got to make some adjustments in his game. And I do think that someone like Scott Peters can come in and perhaps teach him some different techniques that will help him with his game. But my estimation is they're not giving up on Cordell Volson, but he is going to have to compete for a starting job. That starting, if he stays at left guard, that job he'll have to compete for next summer.
What are your thoughts on Cody Ford? Because to me, he's kind of the value he brought, the flexibility he proved this past year. Is it a rookie plus Cody Ford and then maybe a flyer on someone who's on the market? Or does Cody Ford ultimately cash in on saying, hey, look what I did in Cincinnati?
Right.
I can tell you how many Thursdays or Fridays they came to me and said, forget it. You got to play this spot, in 48 hours. And look what I did. I mean, I thought he made himself some money last year.
I do too. And Cody Ford is one of those players, I think, for the Bengals that not under contract for next year. And I thought he had a good enough second half of the season last year, Charlie, to where he's going to command money on the open market that the Bengals aren't going to be willing to match. I could be wrong about that. I have no inside information on that. But if you're asking me, does Cody Ford get paid? I think the answer is yes, and I think he's probably going to get more than what the Bengals are going to be comfortable paying him. Would the Bengals like to see him back on the roster? I think they would, simply because of the flexibility he gave you. He could play 3 different positions of the 5 on the offensive line, or actually 4 of the 5. He's not a center, but certainly he can play both guards and did play both tackle spots. That is a rare commodity in the NFL, and that's why I think another team would value him and give him more in free agency than I think the Bengals would be willing to offer up.
I'm with you there. I think that's if somehow he winds up back here on an affordable deal, that would be one of the more
ideal.
underrated. Yeah,
it'd be great for the Bengals, but I never assume that the best financial option for a team, especially in this case the Bengals, is the one that's going to present itself. We're speaking with Charlie Clifford of WLWT Channel 5 here in Cincinnati. I want to tell you about Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Again, you heard that right, 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today on Prize Picks. You can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The second half of the basketball season is here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Download the app today and use that code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Back with Charlie Clifford of Channel 5 here in Cincinnati. Charlie, I think I want to get to another veteran who apparently said goodbye on the X format on Monday morning, and that's Mike Hilton. Now, he is and was slated to be a free agent, so this is no surprise. He's 31 years of age. He signed a 4-year, $24 million contract with $6 million guaranteed back in March of 2021. He played a pivotal role, Charlie, in the last 4 years, providing a lot of solid play and kind of a foundation block. Stability is the word I was struggling for there. He provided a lot of stability in a secondary that had a lot of moving parts, especially the last 2 seasons. To me, I think Dax Hill slides into that spot. Maybe that's an assumption we shouldn't be making in the third day of March 2025, but that's the way I see it unfolding.
I listen to the Dax Hill whisper whenever there's a potential position change. Trags, let's remember, everybody, before all the chatter about moving from safety to outside corner was really out there, that was the last time I was on with you. You had pretty much thrown it out there like, hey, I think this is going to happen. Just wait. Let's let this play out. It was, of course, during 23 when Hill was struggling on the back end. And you were right. And we look up in the Baltimore game in that first quarter, and we're all looking at each other like, holy, Dax Hill's their best outside corner right now. He just did this for 6 weeks at camp. He was coming, on the fly. And that I'm going with you. If you're saying he's popping into nickel, I'm riding Trags to victory here. But as you said, Mike Hilton, one of the best people you'll be around in football.
Fabulous guy. And I know the fan reaction was what it was on the X Monday. A lot of people wishing him well, thanking him for what he meant to the Bengals organization.
Yeah, and the timing here is no surprise. I was trying to pry with Duke a little bit at the combine right as we were wrapping up. Can you give us anything from that conversation with Hilton at the end of the year? Because we know Mike's a winner, and ultimately the fact that he wasn't able to get the objective done here with the Lombardi Trophy, that's going to eat at someone like Mike Hilton. So I was kind of curious, is there any, hey, let's see down the road, late in free agency, if you don't like anything, maybe we look at a 1-year deal. But Mike, I just think they have too many young guys that need to play right now. Yeah, they have to figure out.
100%.
You know what I mean? They kept Chuck Burks for a reason because they've seen flashes from all these guys, Josh Newton, DJ Ivy, obviously Cam and DJ on the outside. It's just time to play the young guys. And I know Bengals fans have been banging their fists on the table. Why aren't these young guys playing more? Well, guess what? They're going to play more under Al Golden. And Mike Hilton, part of the departure there, definitely because they believe in that room, and it's time to see what they've got.
One thing that you should look at, and one reason I think Dax Hill is a natural fit at the slot position, tackling is a premium.
Yeah.
And at that spot, and Dax Hill was their best tackler and has been after Mike Hilton the last several years. They need to improve their tackling in 2025. I remember mentioning this to Darren Simmons, and certainly he's not a defensive coordinator, but I did mention this to Darren Simmons on Thursday because what does a special teams coach rely on? He relies on guys who can, corner a offensive player or a ball carrier in space and get him to the ground. That's what I think a guy like Dax Hill can do. And I told him, I don't think the Bengals were very good. I thought that was one of their weaknesses last year, critical weaknesses over the last couple of seasons. And he said, you're probably not wrong about that. And I think that should be a theme with Al Golden, starting from OTAs and carrying all the way down. You don't have to thump all the time. We hear that expression, right, Charlie? In training camp, once July rolls around, there's some good thumping going on.
Yes.
I don't want to hear about good thumping, okay? I want to hear about fundamental tackling. And that's what the Steelers do. That's what the Ravens do. And, yes, those two teams have flamed out a little bit in the playoffs, but there's got to be a happy medium to get the Bengals back to where they were in 21 and 22, a more fundamentally sound defensive team, getting the ball carrier to the ground. And I think Dax Hill is going to be a big part of that, filling in for Mike Hilton.
Yeah, I mean, they're banking on him, right? And I think the injury here, we can't overlook. First major injury. He's a young guy just getting through the mental side of that. I'm sure Matt Summers is working overtime with him.
Right.
I know he's been here in Cincinnati, but I think patience would be the approach here because this is significant ACL. And when you're going down that road for the first time, I think, you just you don't want to rush anything, obviously, and just interested to see how he comes back because I think nowadays with the technology and the recovery time, we all just assume, oh yeah, you're going to pop up, you're going to be who you used to be. Just got to let that play out.
By the way, I want to go back to Alex Cappa for a second because we know he's probably gone, and Cordell Volson.
Yeah.
The reason I think Cordell Volson is a reclamation project and certainly can be re-energized in his time here in Cincinnati. He's entering his third season as a guard on the offensive line. He has got something that you can't teach. He has got size. I think they need to get some bulldog out of him. And I think, a lot has been made of the jiu-jitsu background of Scott Peters and the UFC background. Besides the technique, Charlie, you know what Cordell Volson needs? He needs a foot on his butt. He needs to get angry. He needs that nasty. And I think in part, that's why I think they brought Scott Peters here. Because I think Zach saw that Cleveland offensive line when, before the past season with New England, Peters was in Cleveland under Bill Callahan, Brian's father, who is, a Hall of Fame caliber offensive line coach. And I think they saw something in Peters, and they think that Peters learned something from Bill Callahan that they can bring to Cincinnati. Because while they do want to be the best passing attack in the NFL, kudos to that, they need more balance and explosiveness in the running game. And with a guy like Chase Brown, if you can get half a foot to a foot more of a wedge, you're going to get many more explosive plays.
Yeah, I agree. They've solved the most important part of that equation, and that's finding a back who has burst, who can break away, who can catch the football. So, all right, you cross that thing off. But you're right. I mean, I think with Volson, look, he came in, he had success early. I mean, he's a North Dakota blue-collar guy. I don't think a little success that went to his head at all, but just to now know, hey, if I want to stick around, not only in Cincinnati but this league, this is the year to prove it. I'm sure that offseason program has notched it up a little bit, and sometimes you're right, new voice, new way of thinking about it. Peters has all these different things he can pull from. There's no reason for the Bengals not to keep Volson around to see, as you said, competition in camp. I mean, to me, that's one. Until it comes down to final cut day, I don't expect to see Cordell Volson exiting stage left.
No, I mean, at the very least, he's depth, because
Yeah.
the Bengals are going to, every team needs depth
Yes.
along the offensive line, and you have Cordell Volson there who's familiar with what the Bengals want to do in terms of their offensive line scheme. I don't think they're cutting him. I don't think he's absolutely going to be on the roster next year. Before we let you go, Charlie, I want to wrap up with some more news, and the Bengals finalizing their 2025 coaching staff for the upcoming season. Well, the upcoming season is 2025. So yes, Trags, that's the upcoming season.
We're not.
Anyway, the Bengals Monday finalized their coaching staff with the hirings of Sean Desai as senior defensive assistant, Mike Moon as defensive assistant, and the team also promoted Jordan Salkin to assistant wide receivers coach behind Troy Walters. So that's kind of an interesting news item there. You know how many assistants Zach Taylor has? I'll give you one guess, and then I'll tell you.
In totality, offense and defense?
Yes, the entirety of his assistant coaches, except Doug Rosfeld, who is the longtime chief of the coaching staff. We're not including Doug.
Are you counting the strength coaches?
Yes, I am. Okay. Very good question.
I'm going to go with 22.
You're one off. 23. Very good, Charlie. That's a lot of coaches. And the reason I bring this up is I think Zach Taylor has put together over his time, especially the last 4 to 5 years, a very reputable coaching staff who, you hit and miss everywhere. Every coaching staff has hits and misses. But when you are led by people like Dan Pitcher, the offensive coordinator, Troy Walters, the wide receivers coach, who, granted, has had great talent to work with, but Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins, there's nobody in the National Football League or in football period that they respect more than Troy Walters. You look at Justin Riscotti, the passing game coordinator, Justin Hill, the running backs coach, who I don't think we talk enough about. He is very well respected. You brought up one in Charlie Burks, and one guy that always gets the tip of the cap from Zach Taylor, and that's tight ends coach James Casey. Yeah. Any thoughts on the coaching staff?
No, I think not stunned with the changes. I mean, they went young. I think they went for energy. They went for fresh voices, and kind of the old guard, is out. But I think in terms of where do you need to see the most growth, I mean, it's Jerry Montgomery's group. It's in, unless this team can create more pressure, everything we've talked about, everything we'll continue to talk about, who's getting re-signed, how great is the passing offense, it's not going to matter unless opposing quarterbacks can start to feel some heat from not just off one edge, interior, both edges, coming up from the linebacker spot, the ability again to you're losing Mike Hilton as a blitzer, which was one of his strong suits, but very intrigued, Trags, to see how Jerry Montgomery comes in with what will be a really young interior, this D-line, and tries to dial it up right away here. To me, that's going to be so fun to watch this summer and into the early months of 2025.
Anything you got coming up on Channel 5 that our audience should be on the lookout for?
I appreciate the opportunity. We just sat down with the new FC Cincinnati star, really one of the two, Kevin Denke, who's been on this scoring barrage out of the gate. Very interesting life story. Togo to Paris, now to the United States. Just an impressive human being. I think people will love here in short order in Cincy. So look for that one on Thursday. And then that's about it. Again, thanks for having me on this. It just keeps getting more and more fun, Trags. I don't know. I guess we're spoiled here getting to talk about the National Football League. It never gets old.
No, it definitely does not. He is Charlie Clifford, does a fabulous job covering all things Cincinnati sports. You can catch him on Channel 5 weeknights, right? 6 and 11. Want to make sure I got this.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7, and 11.
5, 6, 7, and 11. Well, that's why I ask. And you can also catch him on the app, correct?
Yes.
WLWT.com.
Yes. You're doing too many plugs here. I'm going to have to pay you out for each plug.
I pay you, but I don't pay you enough. So I appreciate it, Charlie. He is Charlie Clifford of Channel 5 here in Cincinnati. My name is Mike Petralia at Trags. Thanks for downloading and consuming this edition of the Jungle Roar Pod, brought to you as always by our great folks at CLNS Media and our great partners at Prize Picks. Until next week, keep that jungle roaring.